The bridge of the Yuan's vanguard hummed with the low thrum of overtaxed engines, a sound Rane had come to know like his own heartbeat. He stood at the command dais, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the holographic display that sprawled across the room like a shattered starfield. Flecks of red, enemy signatures, swarmed the edges, 1,000 drone-like fighters from the Caliph Collective, their hulls glinting like obsidian shards under the distant sun's glare. Sol's fleet, a ragged line of 12 human warships, held the center outgunned and outflanked. He was 58 with salt and pepper hair cropped close and a jaw set like forged steel, but in moments like this he felt the weight of every year. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kira Voss said from her station, her voice steady but edged with the strain of 12 hours on shift. She was the cautious one, always double-checking sensor sweeps, her fingers dancing over the console like a pianist avoiding a wrong note. Their formations tightening. If they breach the asteroid belt, we'll lose the high ground in under 10 minutes. Sol nodded, not turning. He could picture her. Sharp features, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes that missed nothing. "Options, Lieutenant?" Voss hesitated, glancing at the tactical overlay. The Caliph ships moved with eerie precision, no wasted energy, their bioluminescent trails painting the void in sickly green. "We could reroute power to the forward shields by time for the destroyers to fall back. But it'll leave engineering exposed." From the navigation console, Captain Elias Thorne leaned forward, his wit as quick as his reflexes. Thorne was the wild card, broad-shouldered with a perpetual smirk that hid the scars from too many close calls. "Exposed? That's one way to put it. Or we poke the hornet's nest, feint with the frigates, draw them into the debris field. Let the rocks do the talking." Sol considered it, the hologram flickering as another Caliph probe darted close, its scan pinging harmlessly off their hull. The collective didn't negotiate. They absorbed, assimilated worlds with cold efficiency. Earth had been next on their list until Sol's task force intercepted their vanguard at Epsilon Eridani. Now, with supplies dwindling and comms silent from home, this was no longer a skirmish. It was survival. "Thorne's got the right instinct," Sol said finally, his voice calm, carrying the gravel of command. "But we adapt it. Voss, divert auxiliary power to the point defense grid. Thorne, plot a microjump for the outer wing. Make it look desperate, then loop back through the belt's shadow." The crew moved without question, stations beeping in response. Sol watched the display as his orders rippled out, the human ships shifting like wary predators. A single Caliph drone broke formation, accelerating toward them, its weapons ports glowing. The vanguard shuddered as point defense fire lit the void, lasers stitching the darkness until the intruder bloomed into silent flame. But as the first feint began, Sol felt the familiar knot in his gut. The Caliph weren't fooled easily. Their hive mind adapted faster than any human tactic, and with odds like these, one misstep could end it all. He straightened, ignoring the ache in his shoulder from an old wound. No room for doubt now. Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the faint hum of the bridge vibrating through his bones like a distant storm. The view screen dominated the forward bulkhead, a vast mosaic of stars streaked with the glowing trails of enemy fighters swarming like angry hornets. His fleet, 30 battered cruisers and a handful of support vessels, hung in the void, a fragile line against the alien armada blotting out half the sector. The Krell had come for the colony worlds, their bioships pulsing with organic fury, and now they demanded surrender via tight beam transmission, their words translated into halting English: "Primitives, yield or perish in the swarm." He didn't flinch. Around him, the bridge crew moved with practiced urgency, Lieutenant Mara Voss at tactical, her fingers dancing over holographic displays. Engineer Tomas Hale hunched over diagnostics, sweat beading on his brow, and Captain Elara Kane, his executive officer, standing rigid beside him, her eyes sharp as laser sights. "Admiral," Voss reported, voice steady despite the red alerts flashing, "their lead carrier is powering weapons. ETA to firing range, 2 minutes. We've got partial shields on the port flank, but the drive core's still venting plasma from that last skirmish." Rane nodded, his mind racing through vectors and probabilities. Outnumbered 1,000 to 1, the analysts back on Earth had said it was suicide. The Krell's empire spanned light years, their hives breeding warriors by the billions. But humans didn't break easy. "Hale, reroute auxiliary power to the forward batteries." Voss, target their fighter clusters. Disrupt the swarm before it coalesces. Kane, signal the wing commanders. Alpha pattern, feint left, strike right. The orders rippled out and the bridge came alive with the chatter of comms. Rane watched as his ships pivoted, thrusters flaring blue against the black. The Krell fighters dove in response, their organic hulls iridescent under the starlight, spitting bioplasma that lit the void in sickly green arcs. One of his destroyers, the USS Vanguard, took a hit square amidships. Alarms wailed as its silhouette twisted, venting atmosphere in a silent scream. Admiral, Vanguard's reporting hull breaches, Kane said, her tone clipped, betraying no fear. They're ejecting escape pods. Too soon for that, Rane muttered, leaning forward. He keyed his console, patching directly to the wing. Vanguard, this is Rane. Hold formation. We're not losing you to a glancing shot. The response crackled back, the captain's voice laced with grit. Copy that, sir. Sealing compartments now. Hale slammed a fist on his panel. Core's stabilizing, but we're down 15% efficiency. If they breach the outer ring, they won't. Rane cut in, his voice a low rumble that cut through the tension. He'd flown fighters in the border wars, seen crews hold against worse odds. Ingenuity, not numbers, turned the tide. Voss, deploy the decoys. Let them chase ghosts. She complied, and false signatures bloomed across the tactical grid, phantom ships mimicking his fleet's signatures. The Krell swarms splintered, half veering toward the illusions, their plasma fire harmlessly scorching empty space. For a moment, a sliver of opening appeared, his cruisers edging closer to the carrier's vulnerable underbelly. But the Krell adapted fast. Their lead ship shuddered, expelling a wave of boarding drones, sleek beetle-like craft burrowing toward the nearest human vessel. Rane's jaw tightened. Evasive maneuvers, all ships. Kane, get me a firing solution on those drones. The bridge shuddered as his flagship, the UNS Odyssey, rolled to port, point defense guns chattering. Drones exploded in bursts of chitin and fire, but not all. One latched onto a frigate's hull, its tendrils prying at the seams. Screams echoed over the comms, cut short by static. Rane stood pacing the raised dais. The air smelled of ozone and recycled fear. We're not here to die pretty, he said, addressing the crew without looking away from the screen. We're here to make them regret waking us up. Hale, prep the EMP burst from the auxiliary array. Voss, sink it with the next salvo. As the plan took shape, the carrier loomed larger, its maw opening like a predator's jaws. The stakes pressed in, he could feel the weight of the colonies behind them, the billions counting on this ragged defense. One wrong move and it all crumbled. But Rane had faced shadows before. This was just another dark to pierce. Soul Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the bridge lights flickering like distant stars caught in a storm. The view screen dominated the forward bulkhead, a vast canvas of swirling nebulae and the jagged silhouettes of the alien fleet. Thousands of them, angular hulls glinting with predatory menace. His fingers itched for the controls, but he forced them still. Status on the jump drives, Lieutenant Voss? Voss, ever the cautious one, wiped sweat from his brow without taking his eyes from the console. His voice came steady, laced with that dry wit that kept the crew from unraveling. Holding at 80%, Admiral. But if we push for another microjump, we're risking a cascade failure. Those Krell bastards have us pinned like insects on a board. Rane nodded, his jaw set. The Krell armada encircled them, their energy lances probing the human ship's shields in rhythmic pulses that shook the deck plates. Outnumbered 1,000 to 1, the Independence was a lone wolf in a sea of sharks. But wolves had teeth and humans knew how to bear them. Ensign Hale, what's our window? Hale, young and brave to a fault, leaned into her tactical display, her fingers dancing across holographic readouts. The scar on her cheek from the last skirmish pulled tight as she frowned. 5 minutes, sir. Their formation's tightening, another volley and they'll breach the outer hull. We slingshot around that gas giant or we don't slingshot at all. The plan had been simple at the outset. Use the nebula's interference to mask their signature, slip past the blockade and deliver the payload to the core worlds. But the Krell had adapted faster than expected, their hive mind tactics turning the nebula into a trap. The first microjump had bought them time, scattering a wing of pursuers, but now the noose tightened. Rane could feel the weight of it, the lives depending on his call. 200 souls aboard plus the billions waiting for the weapons deployment. Helm, plot the trajectory. Full burn on my mark. Rane's voice cut through the hum of alarms, calm but edged with steel. Voss shot him a sidelong glance, the unspoken argument hanging between them. Caution versus the gamble. Hale's hands trembled slightly, but she locked in the coordinates without hesitation. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, weaving through a hail of plasma bolts that lit the void in crimson streaks. A near miss rocked them, sparks erupting from a panel near Voss's station. He cursed under his breath, slapping the override. Shields at 62%. We're dancing on the edge here, sir. Rane ignored the jab, eyes fixed on the view screen. The gas giant loomed, its banded storms a swirling vortex that could shear a hole like paper. The Krell ships swarmed closer, their formations precise, almost elegant in their lethality. One striker craft peeled off, vectoring straight for the Independence's flank. Target that lead ship, Rane ordered. Torpedoes, pattern Delta. Hale's confirmation was a sharp nod. Firing. The torpedoes streaked out, dummies laced with chaff to confuse the Krell sensors. They bloomed into a deceptive cloud, drawing the striker into a chase. For a heartbeat it worked. The alien vessel dove in lances firing wildly. Then Hale triggered the real payload, a cluster of mines that erupted in the striker's path, shredding its engines in a silent fireball. Got him, Hale said, a fierce grin breaking through. But triumph was fleeting. The Krell fleet adjusted, a dozen more ships angling to intercept their slingshot path. The giant's gravity well tugged at the Independence, engines whining in protest. Voss's console beeped urgently. Jump drives overheating. We abort now or we cook from the inside. Rane weighed it, the cost flashing in his mind. Abort and they faced annihilation in open space. Push and the drive might fail mid-jump, stranding them in the void. The bridge crew watched him, breaths held. Hale's eyes met his, brave, unyielding. Voss's grip tightened on his controls, waiting for the word. Push it, Rane said finally. All hands brace. The ship groaned as the drive engaged, space folding around them in a wrench of acceleration. Alarms wailed, but they held barely. The view screen blurred into hyperspace streaks, the Krell fleet shrinking to specks behind. Voss exhaled, slumping back. That was too close. What's the play now, Admiral? We've got maybe one more jump before she gives out. Rane rose, clapping a hand on Hale's shoulder as she monitored the fading pursuit. We adapt. Get me a scan of the inner system. If the Krell think we're suicidal, let's give them reason to doubt. The bridge settled into a tense rhythm, the crew's camaraderie a quiet anchor amid the chaos. But as the hyperspace tunnel stabilized, a new alert pinged. Anomalous readings ahead, something the Krell hadn't accounted for. Rane's pulse quickened. Whatever it was, it might just be their edge, or their end. Soul Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the hum of the bridge vibrating through his bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with tactical overlays, red icons swarming like angry hornets around the blue dot of their makeshift flagship, the UNS Vanguard. Outnumbered 1,000 to 1, the alien armada stretched across the void, their sleek iridescent hulls pulsing with an otherworldly energy that made the human sensors glitch. Captain Alara Voss, his XO, leaned over the console, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. Admiral, their formations tightening. If we don't adjust course in the next 30 seconds, they'll envelop us. Soul's jaw tightened, his mind racing through the simulations they'd run 100 times in the dimlit strategy room. Brave didn't mean reckless, but caution had its limits when extinction loomed. He nodded to Lieutenant Kai Ren, the wiry engineer whose quick wit had saved their reactors more times than Soul cared to count. Kai, reroute auxiliary power to the forward shields. We're not running, we're drawing them in. Kai's eyes lit up, a grin cracking his usual sarcasm. Aye, sir. Giving the bugs a light show they won't forget. The plan was simple, or as simple as anything got against the Krell Dominion. Their ships thrived on overwhelming force, plasma lances that could vaporize a cruiser in one hit, but they were predictable, herding prey into kill zones. Soul's gambit was to feint vulnerability, lure the Vanguard into a tight cluster where human minds could do the real work. No grand speeches, just the cold math of survival. Ilara shot him a sidelong glance, her cautious nature etched in the furrow of her brow. This could backfire, Soul. One wrong move and we're debris. He met her eyes steady as the stars. Then we make sure it's the right one. The order rippled out and the Vanguard shuddered as engines flared, dipping toward the asteroid belt's edge. Alarms blared softly, a chorus of warnings from the straining systems. On the screen, the Krall ships accelerated, their formations shifting like a flock of predators scenting blood. Sol could almost hear the alien commander's disdain, humans fragile and foolish charging to their doom. Minutes stretched into eternity. Kai muttered under his breath, coaxing the power grid like a stubborn beast. Come on, you beauty, hold together. A proximity alert pierced the tension. 3 Krall interceptors breaking off, closing fast. Their weapons glowed, building charge. Alara's voice cut sharp. Incoming fire. Evasive maneuvers. The ship lurched, inertial dampeners whining as they twisted away. A plasma bolt grazed the hull, sending sparks across the bridge. Sol braced, tasting the acrid bite of ozone. Shields at 60%, Kai reported, sweat beading on his forehead. They're probing us, testing for weakness. Sol's fingers drummed the console, calculating vectors in his head. The mines were deployed, invisible sentinels drifting in the belt's shadow, but the Krall were adapting faster than expected. One interceptor veered too close, its sensors likely picking up the faint gravitic distortions. Target that lead ship, Sol barked. Torpedoes full spread. The torpedoes launched with a thunderous release, streaking toward the alien vessel. It dodged 2, but the third connected, blooming into a silent fireball that lit the void like a newborn sun. Cheers erupted briefly on the bridge, cut short by Alara's urgent whisper. Admiral, the main fleet's committing. They're not biting the bait, they're overwhelming it. Sol straightened, the weight of command settling heavier. The view screen filled with the Armada's advance, a tidal wave of destruction. Kai slammed a fist on his panel. Mines are armed, but if they scatter. He trailed off, the unspoken risk hanging. Failure meant the belt became a graveyard for humans first. Sol's voice remained even, laced with the grit that had carried them this far. Arm the secondaries. We fight smart or we don't fight at all. As the first Krall waves plunged into the trap, the asteroid field's jagged silhouettes framed the chaos. Explosions rippled outward, mines detonating in chain reactions that tore through a dozen alien hulls. Fragments spun lazily, glinting against the stars. But the cost mounted. A human frigate, the Reliant, vanished in a plasma storm, its last transmission a garbled scream. Sol felt the loss like a punch, Alara's hand brushing his shoulder in silent solidarity. The battle hung in fragile balance, the Krall pressing despite the hits, their sheer numbers a blunt instrument grinding against human cunning. Kai whooped as another cluster erupted. That's 10 down, make it 11. But Sol's eyes narrowed on the screen's edge, where a massive command ship loomed untouched and ominous. The real test was coming, and with it the stakes sharpened to a razor's edge. The view screen flickered with data streams, red icons swarming like angry hornets around the blue dot of their carrier, the UNS Vanguard. Status on the forward shields? He barked, his voice cutting through the chatter. Lieutenant Kira Voss, his tactical officer, didn't look up from her console. Her fingers danced across the holographic keys, pulling up shield integrity readouts. Holding at 60%, Admiral. But those Krall disruptors are chewing through us. Another volley and we'll be venting atmosphere on Deck 7. Sol nodded, his jaw tight. The Krall armada encircled them, 1,000 vessels strong, their sleek, obsidian hulls glinting under the starfield's cold light. What the aliens saw as a suicidal charge, Sol knew was calculated desperation. Humanity's fleet was scattered across the sector after the ambush at Epsilon Eridani. The Vanguard was the last bastion, carrying the prototype warp disruptor that could turn the tide, if they could just buy enough time to deploy it. Engineer Hale, talk to me, Sol said, swiveling toward the comms panel where Chief Engineer Marcus Hale patched in from the engine room. Hale's face appeared, smudged with grease, his eyes sharp behind cracked glasses. Admiral, the disruptor's charging, but the power relays are frying. Those Krall pulses are inducing harmonics in our grid. It's like they're singing the ship to sleep. I need 10 minutes to reroute auxiliary power, but if they hit us again... Sol's mind raced. 10 minutes in this meat grinder? The Krall didn't negotiate, they eradicated. He'd seen their work on the colony worlds. Glassed surfaces, silent graveyards. But humans adapted. Always had. Do what you can, Marcus. Kira, evasive pattern Delta 7. Get us behind that debris field from the destroyer we just scrapped. Aye, sir. Kira's voice held steady, but Sol caught the flicker in her eyes, the weight of command echoing back at him. She was cautious where he was bold, her wit a scalpel to his hammer. As the vanguard lurched into motion, thrusters flaring against the void, a Krell frigate peeled off from the formation, its weapons ports glowing with plasma charge. The ship shuddered as the first shots glanced off the hull. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing across the bridge. Sol braced as a console sparked nearby, showering sparks like fireflies. Damage report. Minor hull breach on the starboard side, Kira replied, her tone clipped. Sealing it now. But they're adapting, that frigate's locking on with tractor beams. Sol's gut twisted. Tractors would pin them, turn the vanguard into a sitting duck for the swarm. He leaned forward, studying the tactical overlay. The debris field loomed ahead, remnants of a human destroyer twisted into jagged metal bones. An idea sparked. Risky, but humans thrived on risky. Helm full burn toward the field. Kira, prepare to vent plasma from the auxiliary vents on approach. Make it look like we're leaking drive core. Kira shot him a glance, her brow furrowing. Admiral, that'll drop our shields to nothing. If they call our bluff, they won't, Sol cut in, his voice firm. Krell doctrine prioritizes crippled prey. By hail his time. The vanguard surged forward, engines roaring in the silence of space. Sol watched the debris grow larger, a graveyard of twisted girders and shattered plating. As they closed, Kira initiated the vent. Superheated plasma bloomed from the hull like blood from a wound, painting the sensors with false signatures of catastrophic failure. On the view screen, the Krell frigate hesitated, its formation tightening. Then, like a predator scenting weakness, it accelerated, beams lancing out to ensnare the dying carrier. Tractors locking, Kira announced, her hands steady on the controls. The ship bucked, inertial dampeners straining as the beams tugged them off course. Sol felt the pull in his teeth, the bridge lights dimming under the strain. Now helm, hard evasive into the field. Sol ordered. The vanguard twisted free with a groan of protesting metal, diving into the debris like a swimmer into choppy waves. Girders whipped past, close enough to scrape paint from the hull. The Krell frigate followed, overconfident, its bulkier frame ill-suited for the maze. A sharp jolt rocked the ship, collision alarms blared. We've clipped a fragment, Kira said, wincing. Shields at 20%. Sol ignored the pain in his shoulder from the harness. Keep us moving. Marcus, how's that reroute? Hale's voice crackled over the comm. Almost there, sir. 5 minutes. Just hold them off. The view screen showed the Krell ship emerging from the debris, scarred but undeterred, its weapons recharging. But in its wake the field had done its work. Chunks of wreckage clung to its hull, slowing it, disrupting its fields. Sol allowed a grim smile. 1 down, 999 to go. Kira turned to him, her eyes alight with reluctant admiration. Clever, Admiral. But the rest of the fleet's closing the noose. We can't dance like this forever. Sol met her gaze, the weight of the stars pressing in. Then we don't dance. We fight dirty. He keyed the fleet-wide channel. All hands, this is the Admiral. We're outnumbered, outgunned, but we're human. We've turned worse odds into legends. Hale's got the disruptor priming, hold the line. Cheers echoed faintly from the lower decks, a ripple of defiance. But as another Krell squadron materialized on the edge of the screen, Sol wondered if grit alone would suffice. The cost was mounting. Crews lost. Sol gripped the armrests of his command chair, the bridge lights flickering like distant stars caught in a storm. The view screen showed the alien armada closing in, a swarm of angular hulls blotting out the nebula's glow. His fleet, what remained of it, hung in formation, engines humming with the strain of evasive maneuvers. Lieutenant Hara, ever the cautious one, leaned over her console, her fingers dancing across the controls. Admiral, their vanguard is vectoring for our port flank. If we don't pull back, they'll shred the destroyers. He shook his head, eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. Pulling back meant abandoning the debris field they'd fought so hard to claim, a graveyard of enemy ships that could still yield wreckage for repairs. No retreat, Lieutenant. Signal the wing. Faint left, then hit them with the graph pulses on my mark. His voice was steady but sweat beaded on his brow. The aliens' ships moved with eerie precision, like a hive mind dictating every twist. Ensign Vale, the young engineer with a wit sharper than her tools, snorted from her station. Faint? What, sir? Our birds are down to 20% thrust. She patched in a schematic highlighting the failing inertial dampeners across the squadron. Sol shot her a glance, half-smile cracking his fatigue. With guts, Ensign. That's what we've got left. The bridge shuddered as the first salvos lit up the void. Plasma bolts streaked past, one grazing the frigate's shields with a thunderous jolt. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing. Hara's face paled. Shields at 60%. They're adapting to our fire patterns, locking on faster than before. Sol nodded, his mind racing through simulations run 100 times in the simpod. The aliens thought numbers won wars. Humans knew desperation birthed miracles. Mark, he barked. The destroyers lurched into the faint, thrusters flaring blue against the black. The alien vanguard surged to intercept, their formations tightening like a noose. But Sol's true play unfolded behind them. The corvettes, battered but unbowed, dove into the debris field. Vale coordinated the dive, her voice clipped over the comms. Pulsing now, hold tight folks. Gravitic waves rippled out from the corvette's modified arrays, improvised from scavenged alien tech. The debris, shattered hulls and engine fragments, responded like marionettes, hurtling toward the alien flank in a chaotic barrage. The effect was immediate, visceral. Alien ships bucked under the improvised meteor storm, hulls crumpling as twisted metal punched through armor. Explosions bloomed silently in the vacuum, lighting the bridge in staccato flashes. Hara hooped, a rare break in her reserve. Direct hits on 3 cruisers. They're scattering, reforming at bearing 240. But triumph soured fast. Sol's console beeped urgently. A corvette had miscalculated, caught in its own pulse. The ship spun wildly, comms cutting to static. Vanguard, report, he demanded, but silence answered. Vale's hands froze mid-keystroke, her usual quip absent. The cost hit like a gut punch, 50 souls adrift in the cold. The aliens regrouped swiftly, their lead vessel, a massive dreadnought, unleashing a focused beam that carved through another destroyer. The fleet's line buckled, ships peeling away in disarray. Sol stood, pacing the narrow deck. Regroup on the corvettes. Use the nebula's interference. Jam their sensors with the ECM drones. It was a gamble, buying time to salvage what they could from the field. Hara hesitated, then nodded, relaying the order. Aye, sir. But if they push through. They won't, Sol said, more to convince himself. He watched the viewscreen as drones deployed, tiny sparks weaving through the chaos. The nebulous gases began to haze the alien signatures, turning their precision into guesswork. For a breath, the pressure eased. Vale patched in auxiliary power, her voice low. Engines stabilized, Admiral. We can hold for another push. Sol allowed himself a grim smile. Outnumbered, outgunned, but not outthought. The battle's tide hadn't turned yet, but in that flickering moment he saw the crack in the alien wall, a chance born of human stubbornness. Still, the debris field smoldered with their losses, a reminder that every clever move came stamped in blood. The view screen showed the alien armada closing in, their sleek iridescent hulls weaving through the debris field with predatory grace. 1,000 ships, each one a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering, dwarfed his lone carrier, the UNS Vanguard. His XO, Lieutenant Maravos, stood rigid beside him, her fingers dancing over a console that spat error codes in rapid fire. Shields at 40%, Mara said, her voice steady but edged with the grit of someone who'd stared down worse odds in Sims. She wasn't one for panic. Her caution had saved their asses more than once, pulling back from reckless dives when Sol's bravery pushed the envelope. Sol nodded, eyes locked on the tactical overlay. The aliens, those chitinous bastards from the Zerath Collective, had jammed their long-range sensors hours ago, forcing the Vanguard into this asteroid graveyard. It was supposed to be a choke point, a natural funnel to even the fight, but their initial ploy had backfired spectacularly. The first wave of drones he'd launched got shredded by hidden plasma webs, leaving smoking husks drifting like forgotten confetti. Engineering. Sol barked, swiveling toward the comms panel. Ensign Kai Ruiz's face popped up on the secondary screen, sweat beading on his brow under the red glow of his station. Kai was the witty one, always cracking wise to cut the tension, but right now his humor was buried under the hum of overloaded reactors. Holding Admiral. But if they hit us with another barrage, we're venting atmosphere faster than a punctured suit. That jury-rigged deflector array? It's chewing through power like candy. Sol's mind raced. The array was his idea, repurposing the ship's auxiliary graph plates to bounce alien energy weapons back at them. It had worked in The Sims, turning a suicide run into a glancing blow, but reality was messier. The last hit had fried half the couplings and Kai's team was down to manual overrides. Buy me time, Sol ordered. Reroute everything non-essential to the array. Life support if you have to. Kai's eyes widened but he didn't argue. Aye sir. Just don't make me regret skipping that last backup. Mara shot Sol a look, her cautious nature flaring. That's playing with fire, Admiral. One overload and we're blind. Better blind than dead, Sol replied, though doubt gnawed at him. The stakes weren't abstract. Every crewman below decks was family in this tin can, and the collective's broadcast had made it clear. Surrender meant dissection, resistance meant erasure. No glory in that, just the cold math of survival. The ship shuddered as another volley skimmed their hull, alarms wailing like banshees. Sol punched the fleet-wide channel. We adapt. We fight smart. Fighters, launch on my mark. Target their command nodes. Everyone else, hold the line. From the launch bays, Lieutenant Jax Harlan's squadron roared out, sleek hornets slicing through the void. Jax was their ace, brave to a fault, his calm crackling with focus. Wings away, Admiral. Painting targets now. On the view screen, the alien formation tightened, their ships pulsing with bioluminescent signals, like a hive mind flexing. Sol watched as Jax's fighters darted in, dodging tendrils of energy that lashed out like whips. One hornet exploded in a silent bloom of fire, then another, but Jax pressed on, his voice cutting through the static. Fox 3 on the lead cruiser. Wait, they're adapting, pulling shields forward. The aliens were learning just as Sol had feared. Their initial plan, flank and overload, crumbled as the collective vessels shifted, forming a living barrier that absorbed the missile barrage. Kai's voice broke in, arrays spiking. We got a feedback loop, shields dropping to 20. Tension coiled in Sol's gut, the bridge air thick with ozone and sweat. Mara leaned in, her hand on his shoulder. We pull back now, regroup in the asteroids. It's not retreat, it's repositioning. Sol hesitated, the weight of command pressing down. Pulling back meant abandoning the debris field, their one slim advantage, but pushing forward was begging for annihilation. The view screen flared as an alien beam grazed the Vanguard, shearing off a sensor array in a shower of sparks. Helm, evasive pattern Delta, Sol said finally, the words tasting like ash. Fighters, cover our withdrawal, regroup at Point Bravo. Jax's response was clipped. Copy that. But Admiral, if we let them dictate the dance, we're done. As the Vanguard lurched into motion, engines straining against the pull of jagged rocks, Sol felt the cost settle in. 2 fighters gone, engineering on the brink, and the armada still closing. But in the rearview he glimpsed it, a faint ripple in the alien line, their overconfidence leaving a gap. Not victory, not yet, but a thread to pull. Humans didn't win by numbers. They won by never quite giving up. Rane gripped the armrest of his command chair, the bridge lights flickering like distant stars caught in a storm. The view screen showed the alien fleet closing in, their vessels a swarm of jagged silhouettes against the nebula's glow. Status on the warp coils? He barked, his voice cutting through the hum of consoles. Engineer Lila Voss wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers flying over the panel. Holding at 60%, Admiral. That last hit from their disruptors fried half the relays. We push her now and she might tear herself apart. Rane nodded, his jaw set. He'd seen crews crack under less, but Lila's steady hands and sharper tongue had pulled them through worse. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Trent monitored the tactical display, his youthful face taut with focus. Enemies forming a pincer, sir. 3 carriers vectoring to our flank, fighters launching in waves. The bridge shuddered as another volley grazed the hull, sparks dancing across the overhead. Rane leaned forward. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7. Bring us into the nebula's edge. Use the interference to mask our signature. Aye, sir. the helmsman replied, the ship banking hard. Alarms wailed, but Rane tuned them out, his mind racing through options. The aliens, those hulking Kroth, outnumbered them 1,000 to 1, their biotech ships regenerating faster than human weapons could dent. But humans didn't win by brute force. They won by thinking 3 steps ahead. Lila cursed under her breath as a red light blinked on her screen. Coils are destabilizing. If we don't vent the excess plasma soon, it'll cascade through the core. Kai spun in his seat. Venting now would light us up like a beacon. They'll swarm us before we blink. Rane's eyes narrowed, weighing the risks. The Kroth had called this assault mass suicide, mocking humanity's fragile alliance of ragtag ships. But he'd turned desperation into defiance before. Lila, can you route the plasma through the auxiliary vents? The ones we jury-rigged from the cargo bays. He paused, calculating. It's untested. Might work, but it'd overload the shielding on that side. We'd be exposed for a good minute. Better than vaporized, Rane said. Do it. Kai, sync your targeting with the vent pattern. Make it look like we're dumping weapons fire. Draw them in close. The ship groaned as they dove into the nebula's swirling gases, colors bleeding across the view screen in eerie hues. Kai's fingers danced on his controls. Fighters inbound, sir. Estimate contact in 30 seconds. Rane stood, pacing the short distance to the forward console. His crew, Lila with her unyielding grit, Kai's quick wit masking deeper resolve, were the backbone of this battered destroyer, the last bastion in this forsaken sector. The Kroth sought to crush Earth's fledgling navy, but Rane knew their weakness: arrogance. They fought like predators, not thinkers. Plasma routed, Lila announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The ship lurched, a plume of superheated gas erupting from the side, illuminating the void like a false sunrise. On the tactical grid, Kroth fighters veered toward the glow, mistaking it for vulnerability. Kai grinned faintly. They're biting, Admiral. I've got locks on the lead squadron. Fire at will, Rane ordered. Railguns thrummed to life, slugs tearing through the alien craft. Explosions bloomed, debris scattering like fireflies. But the carriers pressed on, their biocannons charging with that ominous green pulse. The bridge lights dimmed as power diverted to weapons. Lila monitored the coils, biting her lip. Warp fields building, but it's uneven. One more hit and a direct strike rocked them, consoles sparking. Kai yelped as his station shorted, smoke curling up. Shields at 20%. Their boarding parties prepping, transporters locking on. Rane's mind sharpened. No time for retreat. Seal all decks except engineering. Lila, get that warp jump prepped for a microleap. Kai, if you can hack their transporter frequency, turn it against them. Kai coughed through the haze, rerouting his console. On it. Their encryption's like a puzzle box, but I've got a backdoor from the last skirmish. The ship twisted through the nebula, phaser fire lancing out. Rane watched the view screen, the Kroth flagship looming, a colossal beast of flesh and metal tendrils writhing. It was do or die, and dying wasn't an option. Lila's voice rose over the din. Jump ready in 10. But Admiral, the strain, we adapt, Rane cut in, clapping a hand on her shoulder. That's what we do. As the counters ticked down, Kai whooped. Transporter jammed. Their boarding parties scattering into the void. The warp coils whined, space folding around them. They leapt forward, emerging on the far side of the nebula, the Kroth fleet momentarily thrown. But Rane knew it was temporary. The aliens would regroup hungrier than before. Scanners showed hull breaches, crew losses mounting. Victory? Not yet. Survival? Earned for now. Soul Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the faint hum of the bridge vibrating through his bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with data streams, red icons swarming like angry hornets around the battered hull of the UNS Vanguard. His fleet, what was left of it, had whittled the alien Vanguard down to a third. But the main wave was cresting now, a tidal force of sleek, obsidian ships that dwarfed human vessels in both number and scale. Status on the jump drives? He barked, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Lieutenant Mara Voss, ever the cautious one, punched keys with fingers that barely trembled. 80% charged, Admiral. But if we initiate now, we'll leave the rear guard exposed. Those Krall cruisers are already vectoring in. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, met his for a split second, a silent plea wrapped in duty. Beside her, Ensign Kai Trent leaned forward, his witty edge dulled by exhaustion. Exposed? Hell, sir, we're dancing on the edge of a black hole already. One more feint and we might just thread the needle through their blockade. Rane nodded, calculating. The plan had been simple at the outset. Lure the aliens into the asteroid field of the Epsilon Veil, use the debris as cover for hit-and-run strikes. Human ingenuity had turned rocks into shrapnel bombs, scattering the first assault waves. But the Krell adapted faster than expected, their adaptive shields shrugging off improvised EMP bursts. Now, with fuel reserves dipping critical and 2 destroyers venting atmosphere, retreat felt like surrender. He couldn't let that word take root. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Rane ordered. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, weaving through a hail of plasma lances that scorched the void inches from the hull. Alarms wailed, a chorus of urgency. Voss reported casualties, Deck 12 breached, medbay overwhelmed. Trent muttered under his breath, "Come on, you bastards, bite on this." He triggered the forward arrays, unleashing a barrage of railgun slugs laced with the experimental gravitic warheads. One connected, crumpling an alien fighter's wing in a silent bloom of debris. But the Krell pressed on, their formation tightening like a noose. Rane's mind raced through contingencies. The aliens called this mass suicide, broadcasting taunts across open channels in broken human tongue. Primitives throw lives at void. Pointless. He'd laughed it off at first, but now with the Vanguard's shields flickering at 30%, the words stung. Not pointless. Earned. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Reliant, Voss said, her voice tight. Captain Alara Kane's face appeared on a side panel, her face gaunt under the red emergency lighting. So we're pinned. Their heavies are focusing fire. We can't hold the flank. Rane saw the desperation in her eyes, the camaraderie forged in 100 simulations now tested in fire. Buy us time, he replied. Reroute auxiliary power to your point defenses. We'll draw them off. As the Reliant peeled away, firing wildly to cover her retreat, Rane turned to Trent. Ensign, prep the anomaly generator. If the jump drives fail, we improvise a wormhole shear. Trent's eyes widened, a grin cracking his fatigue. That's suicide squared, sir. But damn if it won't make him blink. The device, a jury-rigged marvel of human physics, could destabilize local spacetime, creating rifts that swallowed ships whole. Risky as hell, it might take the Vanguard with it. The bridge shuddered under a direct hit, sparks raining from overhead panels. Voss sealed a bulkhead with a curse, her cautious nature yielding to grit. Shields at 15. We need that jump now. Rane stood, the weight of command settling heavier. Outside, the stars blurred with weapon fire, the asteroid field a graveyard of twisted metal. One Krell battleship loomed, its maw opening to unleash a salvo that lit the void in eerie blue. Jump drives online, Voss announced. Rane's heart pounded. Initiate. The ship groaned as reality folded, stars streaking into hyperspace lines. But the Krell followed, their pursuit relentless, slipping through the veil like shadows. Alarms blared, pursuers in tow. The plan had backfired. They jumped, but into a trap of their own making, the aliens' faster drives closing the gap. In the dim glow of the transit, Rane exchanged glances with his crew. No speeches, just resolve. Voss patched repairs, Trent recalibrated the generator. The cost was mounting, lives, ships, the fragile hope of humanity's stand. But they adapted as humans always did, turning the chase into a gauntlet of their design. The shear built in the engines, a promise of chaos ahead. Soul Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the bridge lights flickering like distant stars caught in a storm. The view screen showed the alien swarm closing in, their crystalline hulls refracting the void into jagged rainbows of death. 1,000 ships, maybe more, each one a leviathan compared to the battered remnants of his fleet. The Vanguard shuddered as another plasma bolt grazed her shields, the deck plating humming with the strain. Status, Lieutenant Hale, Rane said, his voice steady, cutting through the alarms. Hale, ever the cautious one, wiped sweat from her brow without looking up from her console. Shields at 20%, Admiral. We've lost the Sirius. She took a direct hit to the core. Casualties mounting. If we don't pull back, we're done. Rane's jaw tightened. Pull back. To where? The aliens' blockade ringed the system like a noose, their emperor's decree echoing in every intercepted transmission. Humanity's defiance was a joke, a suicide pact with the stars. But he'd seen the scans. Those ships weren't invincible. Their energy webs, beautiful and deadly, had a blind spot. A human blind spot born of ingenuity, not perfection. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7. Bring us in tight on the nebula's flank. Rane leaned forward, eyes locked on the tactical overlay. His fleet numbered 12 now, down from 20 at dawn. Each loss was a scar, but they were buying time. Time for the gambit. Ensign Kira Voss, the witty pilot with a grin that defied gravity, spun her controls. "Aye, sir." Threading the needle. "Hope these bugs don't mind a little human pinball." The Vanguard banked hard, engines roaring as she slipped between debris fields from the fallen Orion. Explosions bloomed silently outside, alien fighters swarming like angry hornets. Voss hooped as she dodged a torpedo lock, her fingers dancing. "That's 3 off our tail. Eat vacuum, you shiny bastards." But the joy was short-lived. A ripple crossed the view screen. The aliens' flagship, a behemoth twice the size of anything human, unleashed a barrage. Blue lances of energy pierced the black, claiming the eclipse in a fireball that lit the bridge in harsh relief. "Admiral." Hale's voice cracked. "They're targeting the carriers. If we lose the fighters, we won't." Rane stood, pacing to the central holotable. Chief Engineer Tomas Grant patched in from below decks, his face smeared with grease, eyes fierce. "Grant, how's the jury rig?" Grant grunted, sparks flying behind him. "Holding, sir." "That warp coil hack you ordered? It's unstable as hell, but it'll give us the burst we need. Just don't ask for seconds." Rane nodded. The plan had been simple at first. Feint with the main fleet, draw the aliens into the asteroid belt, then hit their command nodes with a suicide run. But the swarm adapted faster than expected, their hive mind tactics turning the belt into a kill zone. Early probes failed, 2 destroyers shredded before relaying data. Now with half the fleet gone, the stakes clawed higher. One wrong move, and sole humanity's last stand became a footnote in alien annals. "Launch all remaining fighters," Rane ordered. "Voss, you're with them. Draw their interceptors to the outer rim." Voss hesitated, her usual quip dying on her lips. "Sir, that's a one-way ticket." "That's an order, Ensign. Make it count." He met her gaze, the weight of command settling like lead. She'd been the first to volunteer for this suicide watch, joking about dying with style. Now the joke soured. She saluted, sharp. "For Earth, Admiral." Her fighter bay icon blinked green, then streaked into the fray. The bridge fell quiet save for the wail of proximity alerts. Hale's hands flew over her board, rerouting power. "Fighters away." "But the flagship's turning, they're coming straight for us." Rane studied the holotable, the alien formation, a glittering web closing tight. Their weakness, overconfidence. The Emperor's ships prioritized spectacle, broadcasting kills for their empire to revel in. Humans fought dirty, smart. "Grant, initiate Phase 2. Overload the decoys." "Aye." Grant's feed cut to static as explosions rocked the ship. Internal ones controlled. Dummy signals bloomed across the tactical, ghost signatures mimicking a full squadron warp jump. The aliens bit. Half their vanguard peeled off, chasing phantoms into the belt's shadows. Rane's heart pounded. It was working, barely. But the flagship didn't flinch. It accelerated, weapons priming with a glow that painted the bridge in eerie blue. "Incoming salvo," Hale warned. "We can't take another hit." Rane sat, strapping in. "All hands brace. Helm full reverse. Give Voss her window." The Vanguard groaned, thrusters firing in protest. The deck tilted, stars wheeling as they evaded the first volley. One bolt clipped the wing, alarms screaming. Pain lanced through the ship, but they held. Outside, Voss's squadron danced through the chaos, lasers stitching the void. She voxed in, breathless. "Got their fighters tangled, sir." "But they're regrouping." A burst of static swallowed her words. Rane's console lit with red, 3 fighters down. Voss's icon flickered, then steadied. "Live for now." The flagship loomed larger, its maw opening like a predator's jaw. Rane's mind raced, adapt or die. "Grant, divert auxiliary power to forward arrays." "Hale, sync with the nebula." "We're going for the web's heart." Hale's eyes widened. "That's the bridge cluster. If we miss, we won't miss." His voice soul Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the metal biting into his palms as the bridge shuddered under another barrage. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat across the consoles. His fleet, what was left of it, hung in the void like battered husks, their hulls scarred and venting plasma. The alien armada encircled them, 1,000 shimmering behemoths forming an inescapable noose of iridescent energy fields. Outnumbered, outgunned, out everything. Yet here they were, humans refusing to blink. "Status, Lieutenant Hayes," Rane barked, his voice steady despite the fire in his gut. Hayes, ever the cautious one, wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers dancing over the flickering tactical display. "Shields at 12%, sir. The Vanguard is reporting critical damage to their forward arrays. They've lost main propulsion. And the Relentless, she's gone silent." No response. Her words hung heavy, the weight of lost souls unspoken. Rane nodded, jaw set. He'd known Hayes since the academy. Her precision had saved them more times than he could count. Now it just tallied the mounting dead. Across the bridge, Ensign Tarek, witty under fire, always cracking wise to keep morale from crumbling, leaned into his station, rerouting power with frantic efficiency. "They're adapting again," Tarek said, his tone light but eyes sharp. "That last volley? It's modulating frequencies. Our jammers bought us 5 minutes, tops." The view screen dominated the forward bulkhead, painting the aliens' fleet in stark relief. Sleek, organic shapes that twisted like living things, their weapons glowing with an otherworldly blue. The Kethri they called themselves, superior, inevitable. Their transmissions had been clear: surrender or die in mass suicide. Rane had laughed at that, a bitter sound echoing in his mind. Humans didn't do surrender. Not when ingenuity was their only weapon left. "Captain Ellis on the Defiant, sir," Hayes reported. Ellis was the brave heart of the group, charging headlong where others hesitated. His face appeared on a side panel streaked with grime, a makeshift bandage over one eye. "Rane, we're pinned. Their fields are collapsing our formation, can't maneuver without ripping apart." Ellis's voice crackled, urgency bleeding through. "We need that breach now or we're done." Rane's plan had been simple, born of desperation in the strategy huddle hours ago. Overload the Kethri's energy webs with a synchronized EMP burst from the remaining ships, using the debris field from their earlier losses as cover. Humans excelled at jury rigging, turning scrap into salvation. But the aliens had countered faster than anticipated, their adaptive shields shrugging off the first pulse like rain on glass. Now the fleet was fracturing, ships drifting into kill zones. "Understood," Rane replied, mind racing. He couldn't let doubt show, not with eyes on him. "Tarek, recalibrate the emitters. Focus on the central nexus, their command ship. If we hit it hard enough, the web might destabilize." Tarek hesitated, fingers pausing. "Sir, that's a long shot. Their core is shielded 10 times over. We'd have to pour everything into it. Leave us blind." "Do it." Rane's order cut sharp, brooking no argument. The bridge crew moved as one, a well-oiled machine forged in the fires of too many battles. Outside, the stars wheeled lazily, indifferent to the slaughter. The Indomitable lurched as the Kethri fired again, beams slicing through the void. Rane felt the impact in his bones, the ship groaning like a wounded beast. Consoles sparked. A junior tech cried out as shrapnel grazed her arm. Hayes was there in an instant, applying a pressure seal without missing a beat on her readouts. "Power surge complete," Tarek announced. "Firing in 3, 2. The fleet synchronized, a ragged chorus of defiance. Bursts of electromagnetic fury lanced out, threading through the debris like arrows seeking a heart. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then the central Kethri vessel flared, its hull rippling as the web flickered. "It's working." Ellis whooped over the comms. The field's cracking, but triumph soured fast. The aliens' response was a tidal wave of retaliation, their weapons harmonizing into a devastating chorus. The Defiant exploded in a bloom of fire, Ellis's channel going black mid-sentence. Rane's fist slammed the console, the personal cost hitting like a gut punch. "Ellis gone. Just like that. Regroup." Rane shouted, forcing calm. The plan had backfired, buying them seconds instead of victory. Shields failed entirely now, the Indomitable exposed. Kethri drones swarmed, latching onto hulls like parasites. Hayes's voice trembled but held. Incoming boarders, sir. They're breaching the lower decks. Rane stood, drawing his sidearm, a relic from Earth's old wars but reliable. Tarek, lock down the bridge. Hayes, get me a channel to the aliens. Time to improvise. As the first alarms blared for intruders, Rane faced the view screen, the Kethri flagship looming larger. Humans didn't win by strength. They won by thinking 3 steps ahead, by turning the enemy's certainty against them. But with the fleet in tatters and borders closing in, that edge felt razor-thin. One mistake and it was over, not just for him but for every soul fighting beside him. The void pressed in, cold and unyielding as the battle's true stakes crystallized. Survival or the end of human fire in the stars. Soul Rane gripped the armrests of his command chair, the bridge lights flickering like dying stars as the vanguard, as Hull groaned under another barrage. Alarms wailed, but he tuned them out, eyes locked on the tactical holo-display. The alien swarm, thousands of sleek, iridescent ships, had closed in, their energy lances carving through the human fleet like a scythe through wheat. Outnumbered 1,000 to 1, the odds had been suicide from the start. Yet here they were, the remnants of Task Force Epsilon holding the line at the edge of the nebula. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kira Voss said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. She wiped it away with the back of her hand, fingers dancing over her console. "The Defiant is venting atmosphere. Captain Hale reports they can buy us 10 more minutes, but their shields are gone." Rane nodded, his jaw set. Hale was a stubborn bastard, the kind who'd fight to his last breath rather than retreat. Just like the rest of them. "Tell him to fall back to Vector 7. We'll cover their withdrawal." Voss hesitated, her cautious nature surfacing in the brief pause. "Sir, that leaves our flank exposed. The swarm's adapting, their patterns are shifting to counter our feints." "Adapt faster," Rane replied, his tone leaving no room for debate. He wasn't one for speeches, but his crew knew the grit in his voice meant they were all in this together. Humans didn't break. They bent, improvised, survived. Ensign Tomas Reed, the wiry engineer with a wit sharper than his tools, chimed in from the auxiliary station. "Shields at 12%, Admiral. But I've rerouted power from the auxiliary reactors. Should give us a burst if we need it. Just don't ask me how long it'll hold." The nebula's swirling gases painted the viewport in ethereal blues and purples, a deceptive calm against the chaos outside. Rane remembered the briefings. The aliens, the Kethri, viewed this blockade as a gesture of defiance, not war. Mass suicide, they'd called it in their intercepted transmissions, their collective hive mind baffled by creatures who charged into oblivion without guarantee of victory. But Rane knew better. This wasn't about dying gloriously, it was about buying time for the colonies behind them, for the fragile arc of human expansion that couldn't afford another loss. A shudder rocked the ship as an alien lance grazed their hull, sparks erupting from a nearby panel. Voss cursed under her breath, fingers flying to stabilize the systems. "Incoming wave, 50 contacts, bearing 047. Helm, evasive pattern Delta," Rane ordered. The vanguard lurched, thrusters firing in a desperate weave through the debris field. Reed's clever jury rig held, the shields flared, absorbing the worst of it. But the swarm pressed on, their formations tightening like a noose. Rane's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their plan. Earlier failures haunted him. The decoy drones that had fooled only half the fleet, the ion storm they'd hoped to weaponize that instead scattered their own ships. Now, with the nebula's core destabilizing from all the fire, it was their last shot. "Reed, status on the Cascade device?" The engineer grinned, a flash of teeth in the dim light. "Prime, sir. But it'll take a synchronized pulse from the surviving destroyers. Hale's team is in position, but we lose the Defiant and it's game over." Voss shot Reed a glare, her caution clashing with his optimism. "This is insane. One wrong timing and we drag the whole nebula down on us." "Insane's our specialty," Rane said, leaning forward. He keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Vanguard Actual. On my mark, initiate Cascade Protocol. Hell, you lead the salvo. Make it count." The response came in a chorus of affirmatives, voices laced with the raw edge of exhaustion and resolve. No grand declarations, just the quiet determination that had carried humanity from a single blue world to the stars. The holo-display bloomed with activity as the remaining human vessels, battered hulks of steel and will, aligned. The Kethri swarm descended, their ships humming with psionic energy, closing for the kill. Rane watched the distance shrink, his pulse steady. This was it. Mark, he said. The Defiant fired first, a lance of compressed plasma streaking into the nebula's heart. It ignited the volatile gases, a chain reaction rippling outward. The human destroyers followed, their pulses sinking in a web of destruction. The aliens faltered, their hive-link disrupted by the electromagnetic backlash. Ships veered, colliding in the sudden storm. But the Defiant took a direct hit mid-pulse, her hull crumpling like foil. Hale's voice crackled over the comms one last time. For the colonies. See you on the other side. Rane clenched his fist as the explosion lit the void, a brief sun swallowing a dozen Kethri vessels. The cascade built, the nebula convulsing, tearing into the swarm. Hundreds of alien ships shattered, their debris spiraling into the maelstrom. The Vanguard bucked, Reed's reroute straining to